It's Rick Rude from Transforming Education. Today, we're going to be looking at one of the three aspects of the ERE. You may remember the ERE as an organizational tool or a framework developed by the School of Education at Concordia University in St. Paul way back in the 90s. The ERE stands for E, environment, R, relationships, and E, experiences. The idea is that everything we do as educators shape our students' outcome are categorized into one of those three areas: environments, relationships, and experiences. So today, we're going to be narrowing it down and looking at the first E, environments. First, let's define exactly what it is we're talking about when we talk about environments. For the purpose of today's discussion, the environment simply refers to any and all physical objects in the student's space, in the classroom or in the interest center. That's the key to remember when we're talking about the environment in today's discussions. We're sticking to physical objects only. We're going to go over three key distinctions when we think about the physical environment that we provide for our students. The first distinction we want to talk about is the layout. We really want to look at the overall layout of our student space in our center or our classroom. How exactly is it laid out? Do certain interest areas flow into each other without encroaching? Do you have an active area, whether it's manipulatives or dress-up play? Keep a lookout for games with too many items for the space. I remember one classroom setup that we just had received a very large donation of Legos a few weeks in. What happened is we started finding these Legos all over the classroom. They were in the scissor box, they were in behind the fish tank, they were on the bookshelf, they were on the game shelf, they were literally everywhere. And so we observed and we figured out that we had too many Legos for the space. We took a look and noticed that during the time when the kids were allowed to take the Legos out, there simply wasn't enough space in that part of the room to accommodate all the Lego structures being built. So what happened is, bit by bit, day by day, these Legos got scattered throughout the room as kids moved them around to build in open spaces. Definitely an unintended consequence. So why are we talking about Legos? Understand that the environment isn't just the floor plan and the chairs and the tables and such. The environment includes all of the physical things in the classroom. That means pencils, scissors, easels, and Legos as well. Other things to be aware of when you're looking at the overall layout of your student's environment. Do you have any open runways? Children, as you know, are naturally energetic, and when they're presented with a large, wide open space, will often exercise their large motor capabilities and start running. And that's fine if the big, wide open space is outside, but if it's in the classroom, you may suddenly find yourself having to constantly remind students to walk while they're inside. Much easier to take an eagle-eye perspective and preempt the unwanted behavior by setting up the student space so that the only wide open runways that they can find are outside. Another thing to look for: do your students have a sense of their own personal space in the classroom? Have you set up a place that they can securely keep their own belongings and their artwork? Looking around your environment, do you offer different feels to the classroom? Like, do you have light and dark? Do you have hard and soft contrast, both in furniture and flooring? How about quiet and loud? Each should have their own place in the layout of the environment. So here's a couple exercises that I want you to do to get to the next level in your environmental planning. First off, grab your notebook or your journal, and I want you to go take a hard look at the layout of the environment in your student space. Mark down everything you notice. I want you to give yourself kudos for all the things that are working, and take note of the things that might inadvertently be causing problems. The second exercise is super fun. You can do this in your journal, or when I do it, I like to geek out and put it on some graph paper, but take some time. Give yourself a half hour or so minimum for this, but trace the outlines of your classroom on that paper and put in all the things that absolutely can't be moved, like the plumbing and doorways, etc. But then from this blank state, set out to intentionally design what you think would be the ideal physical environment for your students. Keep in mind the concepts that we've already talked about and let yourself run with it. Have some fun with this. So get your notebooks out and get to work. The second thing that we're going to be talking about today, the key thing, is what I call the look. Most of us don't put a lot of thought into it, but it has probably the biggest effect on the subconscious mind of your students, and that is the visual experience of our environments, the look. We've learned in our pedagogy and psychology classes about the modalities, right? The visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. And we know that every learner operates optimally with different mixtures of those three, but on the quantitative scale, the modality that by far gets the most brain attention is the visual modality. So with that in mind, we need to remember to add intention to the visual elements within our environment. Of course, the first thing that comes to mind is color. Colors and contrasts within the student's space naturally cues them as to what to pay attention to. And as teachers, we should constantly be experimenting and playing with colors within our classroom to maximize students' subconscious experiences of the environment. This is where it really pays off as a teacher to be an experimenter as well. Find the right balance of the feelings you want to convey and the visuals in your classroom. Play with colors on bulletin boards and interest centers and walls. What do you want your space to convey? Really think about that too. Do you want to convey warmth and happiness? Do you want to convey an environment that promotes peace and quiet learning? Or maybe you want investigation and social learning. Play with the colors and see what you can create. Now, of course, we also want to make sure that the environment's visuals reflect the messaging that you want to convey as a teacher. Quote posters are just about the best way to not only teach about famous people from the present and past, but to also sculpt attitudes towards learning and life. Pepper your walls with words, and not only are you playing to your students' literacy, but you also tap into their imagination, their ethics. You shape their character and their creativity. The last, and perhaps the most important thing to remember about visuals in the classroom is that it's really important to reflect the students back to themselves in what's on your wall. If you display work that a student has done, that's what I'm talking about here. It acknowledges their work and it boosts their self-image. Now take it one step further and remember this. Always display kids' work at their eye level. Yeah, it's great for the parents to come in on parent night and see all the artwork and see all the work they've done, but 99% of the time it's not the parents who are in the classroom. It's the students. So make sure the work is displayed at their own eye level. Next level practices in classroom visual design focus on colors and words and the student's own work. Take on being a teacher interior designer and see what magic you can make in your student space. Finally, let's talk about what I like to call location, or if you want to get technical, the kinesthetic coordination of the environment. For example, if you have a quiet reading area, is it right next to a busy block or manipulative space? If so, you might be setting yourself up for problems by having too much noise next to a space that you'd like to see dedicated as a quiet space. Remember our earlier talk of runways? This also falls under location. Make sure that if you expect children and youth to be only walking inside, you don't set them up for failure by giving them wide open runways. Now here, this is probably the hardest part about locations, and it was especially hard for me. You have to do your best to try to experience the environment as the child experiences it. Like I said, it's hard for me sometimes because I'm 6'3", and sometimes I forget that I see and experience the world from a hugely different perspective than, say, of a 4'1" second grader. Grab a pair of knee guards if you need them, like I do, and walk around your environment as a 4-footer, or whatever your student's height is. But the important thing is this: check out all the different things that you can see from this perspective. I'd be willing to bet money that you'll see a lot of things that you don't normally notice in the physical environment, especially if you're tall like me. Again, get out your journal. Take some notes about these things and what you experience and the ideas that you want to try. I really recommend doing this knee walk at least 4 times a year, if for no other reason than to just keep your perspective on what your student's perspective is on the environment. Today, we've talked a lot about the first E of the ERE, the environment. So many times we focus on the curriculum that we forget how important the environment is to the growth and development of children and youth. Remember, check your overall layout. Take time to dream of the ideal floor plan, and always be flexible to try new ideas to make your environment better. Remember that the look, visuals, are the key to the subconscious minds of your students. Their attitudes about you, your classroom, and their entire experience with you are often tied up in images without words of their environment. Use colors, use words on the wall, and especially make sure that your students' work is prominently displayed at their level. And third, remember, location, 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 kinesthetic coordination. Make sure that the loud stays with the loud and the quiet stays with the quiet. Make sure your environment reflects your expectations of behavior, and make sure that you literally spend time with your students' visual perspective. I want to thank you for exploring environments with me today. I hope you had a good time. I'm Rick Rude, and together, we're transforming education.